For 43 years, she kept his dog tags in a shoebox under her bed. The Air Force said he was MIA over Vietnam. She never stopped believing he'd come home. Then artificial intelligence found something the military couldn't. He was alive, and he'd been looking for her too. Welcome to AI Human Stories. Before we dive into this incredible tale of love, loss, and how technology reunited a family that war had torn apart, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe some stories are too important to stay buried, hit that subscribe button. Margaret Thompson was 19 when she married Lieutenant Daniel "Danny" Hayes, high school sweethearts from Cedar Falls, Iowa. He was headed to flight school, she was headed to nursing school. They had exactly 6 weeks together before he shipped out to Southeast Asia. That was March 15, 1971. On June 3, 1971, Lieutenant Hayes' F-4 Phantom went down over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Radio contact lost, no chute spotted. No rescue possible in hostile territory. Missing in action, presumed dead. Margaret got the telegram while working her shift at Cedar Falls General. 2 uniformed officers at the nurses' station holding their caps, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. She never remarried. For 43 years, she kept his stuff exactly where he left it. His coffee mug in the kitchen cabinet. His flight jacket hanging in the closet. His letters tied with a blue ribbon in the dresser drawer. Every Memorial Day, she'd drive out to the cemetery and leave flowers at the empty grave with his name on it. Daniel Hayes, 1949 to 1971, beloved husband, missing but not forgotten. Her friends said she needed to move on. Her sister said she was living in the past. Margaret didn't care what anybody thought. Danny had promised he'd come home. Until someone proved he was dead, she'd keep waiting. What she didn't know was that halfway around the world, someone else was waiting too. In a small village outside Hanoi, a man named Duc Nguyen ran a motorbike repair shop. Quiet guy, maybe 70 years old, walked with a limp from some old injury. Kept to himself mostly, fixed bikes, minded his own business. But every morning, Duc would walk to the internet cafe 3 blocks down and spend exactly 30 minutes on the computer. Same routine for the past 5 years, ever since broadband came to the village. He'd open Google, type in the same search terms. Daniel Hayes, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Margaret Thompson, nurse, Iowa. Vietnam pilot, MIA 1971. The cafe owner, Min, got curious after a while. Why you always searching for these American people, Uncle Duck? Duck would just smile sadly and say, old debts need paying. What Min didn't know was that Duc Nguyen wasn't his real name. It was the identity he'd taken after the war, when staying alive meant disappearing completely. His real name was Daniel Hayes. On June 3, 1971, his Phantom had taken heavy fire over the trail. Ejected at treetop level, chute barely deployed, came down hard in thick jungle, broke his leg, cracked 3 ribs, and found himself deep in North Vietnamese territory with no way to call for rescue. He'd been captured 3 days later by a patrol, spent the next 8 years in a camp that officially didn't exist. When the war ended, the camp commanders had a problem. What to do with prisoners who were never supposed to be there in the first place? Their solution was simple. As far as the world knew, these men had died in the jungle, and they'd better stay dead if they wanted to keep breathing. Danny Hayes died in that camp. Duc Nguyen walked out. For 35 years, he'd lived quietly in Vietnam, learned the language, started a business, built a life. But he never stopped thinking about home, never stopped wondering if Margaret had waited, never stopped hoping he could find a way back that wouldn't get him killed. Then the internet came to his village, and everything changed. Dr. Jennifer Walsh ran the Missing Persons AI project at Stanford. Military funding, cutting-edge technology, one impossible goal: use artificial intelligence to solve cold cases that had stumped investigators for decades. The program could analyze facial recognition patterns across billions of photos, cross-reference names, dates, locations, find connections humans would never spot. In November 2024, Margaret's grandson Tyler was home from college, helping his grandmother clean out the attic. He found a box of old photos and letters she'd never shown anyone. "Grandma, you should put these online," he said. "Maybe start one of those genealogy things. You never know what you might find." Margaret wasn't big on computers, but Tyler was persistent. He helped her scan the photos, uploaded them to a family history site, filled out the basic info. Name, Daniel Hayes. Birth, 1949. Service, U.S. Air Force. Status, MIA Vietnam 1971. The site's AI algorithm did what it was designed to do. It started looking for matches. 3 weeks later, Margaret got an email that changed everything. Mrs. Thompson, our AI system has found a potential match for your search. Please contact Dr. Jennifer Walsh at Stanford immediately. Margaret stared at the email for 20 minutes before calling Tyler. Honey, what's this mean? What kind of match? Dr. Walsh had seen a lot of long-shot matches. 99% turned out to be coincidences, data errors, wishful thinking. But this one was different. The AI had found something buried deep in Vietnamese internet records, a motorcycle repair shop registration from 2003. Business owner, Duc Nguyen. But the photo on the registration looked familiar. The system had compared it to the young pilot in Margaret's uploaded photos. Facial bone structure, ear shape, eye spacing, all the markers that don't change with age. 87% probability match. Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Walsh said carefully over the phone, I need you to understand that this is preliminary, but our AI has identified someone in Vietnam who bears a striking resemblance to your husband. Margaret's hand was shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone. Is Danny alive? We don't know yet, but we're going to find out. The next step was the hardest part. Dr. Walsh contacted the State Department, who contacted the Vietnamese government, who sent officials to a little village outside Hanoi to ask some very delicate questions. When they showed up at Duc Nguyen's shop, he took one look at the American documents they carried and sat down hard on his workbench. I've been waiting 43 years for someone to come asking, he said quietly in perfect English. The video call was scheduled for 2 p.m. Iowa time, 2 a.m. Vietnam time. Margaret sat in Tyler's apartment, staring at the computer screen like it might explode. Dr. Walsh was on the line, talking her through what to expect. Remember, Mrs. Thompson, this man has been through trauma we can't imagine. Even if it is your husband, he may not be the same person who left in 1971. Margaret nodded, not trusting her voice. Then the screen flickered, and there he was. 75 years old, gray hair, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. But when he smiled, she saw the 19-year-old boy who'd kissed her goodbye at the airport. Hello, Maggie, he said softly. I told you I'd come home. Margaret broke down completely. 43 years of grief, hope, and stubborn faith poured out in sobs that shook her whole body. Danny, is it really you? It's me, sweetheart. I'm sorry it took so long. They talked for 3 hours that first night. About the camp, about survival, about the impossible choices that kept him alive, but kept them apart. About how she'd waited, how he'd searched, how they'd never stopped loving each other across half a century and half a world. 2 months later, Daniel Hayes stepped off a plane at Cedar Rapids Airport. Margaret was waiting at the gate, holding the same photograph she'd carried for 43 years. They were both in their 70s now. Their young love had aged into something deeper, tested by time and distance and pain. But when he took her in his arms, Tyler swore later, they looked 19 again. The wedding was small, just family, a few old friends, and Dr. Walsh, who'd become something like a daughter to them both. Margaret wore her grandmother's dress, altered for a woman who'd lived a full life. Danny wore his old dress blues, pressed and cleaned, but showing their age. The preacher asked if they'd written their own vows. Margaret went first. 43 years ago, you promised to come home to me. You kept that promise. I promise to spend whatever time we have left making up for all the time we lost. Danny's voice broke a little when he spoke. I never stopped looking for you, Maggie. Not for one day. I promise I'll never leave again. They honeymooned in Hawaii, the trip they'd planned back in 1971. Every sunset, they'd walk on the beach and talk about the life they'd missed and the life they still had ahead of them. Danny started speaking at high schools, telling kids about honor, duty, and never giving up hope. Margaret went back to nursing part-time, working with veterans who came home with invisible wounds. And every night, they'd sit on the porch of the little house in Cedar Falls, holding hands like teenagers, marveling at the technology that brought them back together. Artificial intelligence, Danny would say, shaking his head. Who'd have thought a computer could fix what war broke apart? Margaret would squeeze his hand. Wasn't the computer, honey, was love. The computer just showed love how to find its way home. Dr. Walsh published their story in the Journal of Applied AI, but she changed their names, protected their privacy. What mattered wasn't the fame, it was the proof that technology could heal as well as harm. The Missing Persons AI project has reunited 47 families since then. Sons who thought their fathers died in Korea, daughters who'd been told their mothers abandoned them, brothers separated by wars, disasters, and the simple chaos of human life. Each case starts the same way. Someone uploads a photo, feeds information into an algorithm, and hopes that somewhere in the vast digital ocean of human data, artificial intelligence will spot a face, a name, a connection that human eyes missed. Most of the time, it doesn't work. But sometimes, just sometimes, love finds a way to bridge any distance, even 43 years and 8,000 miles. So here's what I want to know. Do you have someone missing from your life? Someone you've wondered about, searched for, never stopped hoping to find? Tell us their story in the comments below. Share their name, their photo, their last known location. Because you never know who might see it, who might recognize a face, who might be the key to bringing them home. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe to AI Human Stories. We're here to prove that in a world driven by data and algorithms, the most powerful force is still the same one that brought Danny and Margaret back together after 43 years. Love never gives up. Love never stops searching. And sometimes love gets a little help from artificial intelligence. Until next time, remember, the people we love are never truly lost. They're just waiting to be found.